Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022 at 3 o'clock p.m. And that means it's time for Women in Business. Now, I have to admit to you all, the topic that I picked this week is a little of a self-indulgent one for me because I'm going to be turning 53 pretty soon. And I started thinking about why I like this time in my life better than when I was younger and what that means. And it seemed like a good topic to share with all of you. So I figured I would go ahead and spend my last hour, hopefully for a while, where it'll be just me. Next week, we start back with guests again. So I thought I'd spend a little time talking about what I've learned over my 53 years and why I think now is the best time in my life. And also, for those of you who are watching, hopefully it doesn't look too dark. And if it does, let me know. I'm kind of trying to avoid turning on the big lights because I'm a little bit of a headache and the extra light would not be fun for me. But if it is making me look washed out or too dark, please let me know and I will put the lights on. But what I want to talk to you about today is why middle age and getting older can be one of the great things that happens in a woman's life. And like I said, part of this is for me because turning 53, and I started thinking, wow, 53, this is like, good heavens. I'm like over half a century old, and you start thinking about it and going, oh, wow, how did I get here already? What happened? It seems like yesterday I was 20. Now, spoiler alert for those of you who may not know this about me, I hated being in my 20s. I stunk at being in my 20s. I was not good at it. When you were supposed to be, when the cultural expectation was you're running around and you're meeting a bunch of people and you're going to bars and you're doing things you shouldn't be doing and you're being irresponsible and you're figuring out who you are. I was kind of craving structure because I hadn't had that when I was growing up. I was going through a lot of mental health issues that had at that time been undiagnosed and I didn't really know how to handle. I was dealing with a lot of personal crises. So that time in my life is not a time in my life that I look back at nostalgically like, gosh, I wish I was 20 again. I'm very, very happy at 52, and I'm sure I'll be happy at 53. But there are some reasons why that is. And I thought it would be interesting to discuss this specifically since one of the things I have to say is I was doing some research for the show and I Googled, why growing older is good for women or, a bunch of variations, iterations of that topic. And a lot of what I got is how to keep from getting a middle-aged spread and, blah, blah, bullshit crap. And I'm like, you know what? We should be past this. It shouldn't be, why does it always have to be about appearance when it comes to women? So that really annoyed me. But that's also something that I honestly think is one of the factors that can get better as you age. And we will talk about that a little later in the discussion. But really, like I said, this is a little bit of a self-indulgent one for me in that I had a topic that interested me and I hoped that I could talk about it in an entertaining enough way that it would interest the rest of you. So what I want to start with, first of all, is why aging can be a good thing for women. What are the positives about it? What are the things that maybe you don't have when you're 20 that you do have when you're 50? And I think one of those things, and the first thing on my list, is confidence. When I was in my 20s, I was not confident in any aspect of my personality. When I was 22 or 25, I never would have gone on camera and done what I'm doing right now. Certainly not on my own. Good heavens, that would have terrified the living bejesus out of me. I just wouldn't have done it. And if I had done it, I would have spent the whole time criticizing how I looked. Not that I don't do that now, but I do it less now than I used to do. And I have confidence to speak my mind. I have confidence to say, I know what to do. I have confidence in my choices that I didn't necessarily have when I was young. And a lot of that is because I've been through stuff. And if you've been through stuff, you know you can survive. And if you have been through people telling you you absolutely must do this and deciding to do something else and having it work out, then you know that you have the ability to do that. You know that other people telling you how your life should go isn't necessarily the way that things should work. All of that is confidence, simply life experience. I got knocked down and I got back up. I had a bad breakup and I survived it. I, lost a parent or a child or a spouse or a pet or whatever it was. And I was sad, but I survived. All these things build up your confidence. And that's an important asset. People, I don't want to say everyone, because there are people, I think, who just come out of the womb confident. I don't know how that happens. I'd like to be one of those people. I never was. Most people have to build their confidence over time. And how you build your confidence is surviving things, trying things and messing them up, trying things and succeeding, finding out what you like and what you don't like on your own, not based on what other people tell you you should like or what other people tell you they like or what your family likes or any of that stuff. And it's the natural roll and tumble of life. It's getting beat up and knocked down and having days where you're sad and all that kind of stuff that really builds your confidence. And I'm not saying confidence only comes from getting the crap kicked out of you, because that's not true. But going through these things and making it through and finding your way and figuring out that you have the skills to survive and you have the skills to make good choices and you have the skills to pick good people to be in relationships with and all that kind of stuff. That's something you can only get over time. And I am going to say hi to a few people. I kind of jumped in before I said hello. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's here. Cindy, good afternoon to you. Thank you, Evelyn. I'm glad I look wonderful. Cindy, it's a headache. It's not going to kill me, but it is what it is. Thank you, Nancy, for being here. I appreciate it. And thank you for telling me that it looks fine. Wendy, thank you for being here. And Carolyn, really glad to see you too. So thank you all for joining me. And I think confidence is one of those underrated things that people don't necessarily understand builds over time. Like I said, most people don't come out of the womb thinking, damn, I'm the biggest thing since sliced bread. It doesn't happen that way. You learn to like yourself and to trust your skills and to be proud of what you've accomplished over time. And for some people, that takes longer than others. And, I would say even 10 years ago, my confidence level was nowhere near what it is now. And some of the confidence building was being thrown off the deep end when COVID started and having to figure out how to make things work. And some of it has been doing the show and finding out that it actually makes a difference to people and that they like watching it and they like hearing what I have to say. Some of it was just getting older and realizing that I've survived a lot of things and I've made a lot of mistakes and nobody's died yet, including me, which, that's a big part of the equation. And some of it is just this person that I am now, I probably like better than any person I've been previously. And if you think that sounds weird or like I have multiple personalities or something, I don't think it is weird, honestly. I think as we age and as we go through life and as we're at different stages in our life, we're different people. We may like different things. We may have different concerns. We may have different relationships. We may feel a different way about ourselves based on who's around us and what we're doing and how satisfied we are with all of those things. So this person I am right now, I think is probably the most comfortable I've ever been in my skin. Um, I probably worry about what other people think less. I certainly judge myself a little less. I'm a little kinder to myself, and I think all of that has come with age. I respect myself more because I made it through a bunch of stuff. And I'm still here and I'm still standing and I'm still doing good work. And that's something that there are people in my life who would not have given you even odds that that would happen. There are times in my life when I wouldn't have given you even odds that that would happen, but it did. So all of that builds up my confidence because I have a track record now. And I know even if I may not be able to depend on anybody else, I can depend on me because I've proven that. And that helps amazingly to make me feel more confident. And that's something that I had to go through all the years to be able to obtain. So that's one benefit. I really do think just simply growing older and going through life experiences and surviving things can help build your confidence. The next thing would be I am so much smarter about relationships than I was when I was in my 20s. Oh boy. Holy crap. I could tell you stories. I probably have told you stories, not the whole story, but little bits of stories. But I think it's no secret. I've said this before several times that I was really, really bad at picking men when I was young. A lot of that was because I didn't have confidence and I didn't really have self-esteem and I didn't really like myself very much. But it's not only romantic relationships, it's interpersonal relationships, it's people you work with, it's family relationships. Again, going through the experiences has taught me that there are things that are not acceptable in a relationship for me. There are ways of being treated that I don't want to experience anymore. And that means that you make some choices about who you allow in your life and who you don't. One of the perks, one of the nice things about getting older is that that sort of becomes easier to do. Maybe because your bullshit meter, excuse my language, but that's the only thing I can think of to call it, is a little sharper. Maybe because you have a sense that there's only so much time and you don't want to waste it on people who aren't bringing good and positivity and friendship and love and support into your life. Maybe it's just you realize that, hey, I've built a pretty cool person here and that person needs to be treated well. Could be any of those things. Could be all of those things. And I like this. And Cindy says, I cannot relate that topic, relationships. I've been married since the end of my freshman year in college. And you know what, Cindy? I know several people who have been that way. Actually, my aunt and uncle married right out of, I think they were a year out of high school. My cousin, their daughter, married her high school boyfriend shortly after high school. And then my cousin's daughter just married her high school boyfriend about a year out of high school. 2 years, maybe a little more than that. But I mean, they were all very young when they married and they all dated forever their high school boyfriends. So that happens. But I think even if you just happen to find your person and it's a good relationship and it works for you, and some people do when they're young. But I would bet in other areas of your life, you have figured out that there are people that are toxic for you. You have figured out maybe the kinds of friendships that don't work for you, or the kind of work relationships or relationships with customers or whatever it is. So it doesn't have to be romantic. And if you did find your person when you were really young and you've been together forever, I envy that. I wish I had that, but that didn't happen for me. So I think it's beautiful. And I love my aunt and uncle's relationship. My aunt's gone now, which is sad, but they had a beautiful relationship and my cousin has a great relationship with her husband and it's really lovely to watch. So I think that that can happen. And I think that you can meet your best friend in first grade and be friends with them for the rest of your life. I think that can happen. But I also think that as we get older and we meet more people and we experience more kinds of relationships, we start to understand that not every kind of relationship works for us, and that there are certain types of treatment that we don't care to have happen to us. And we understand when we have time for things and when we don't. And that causes us to make choices about the relationships we allow in our lives. Another thing that I've been very kind of open about is that I'm not real close to my immediate family. And that's a choice on my part. I recognize that. That's a choice on my part because honestly, I don't really like how I feel when I'm around them. So I decided I need to be around them less. Is that kind of sad? Yeah. But the choice was accept treatment that wasn't acceptable to have them in my life more, or stand up for myself and say, this is toxic. This is not working for me. I don't want this in my life, and not see them as often. Now, if it were possible to talk things out and air some grievances, possibly that would be different. Up to this point, that hasn't been something that's been possible. So, you have to set boundaries. You have to understand that you deserve a certain level of treatment. And that's something, again, I think we learn over time. Not everybody grows up in a home where they're treated kindly and they're treated like they matter. Not everybody finds their true love in college or in high school. Not everybody has a great first romantic relationship or a great second romantic relationship or a great 10th romantic relationship. So you have to go through some of the things that are hard and some of the things that are sad to learn what you don't want and to learn what's making you make the choices that are getting you in these situations. And that's all part of aging. And yes, Cindy says that can include customers too. Totally can. And I think that's where age helps you in the customer relationship as well. If you've been around for a while, or even if you're just older, there's a level of tolerance for crap that you just don't have anymore. And like I said, that could be because you realize you have less time left in your life and you don't want to waste it. Or it could be because you've gone through enough experiences that you feel like, okay, I understand, I know what my boundaries are and I know what my parameters are. And these are the things that I find acceptable. And these are the things that I don't. And could be just that you also understand that there is enough abundance in the world that if a customer is a pain in your behind, get rid of them because you can find more customers. There's always going to be somebody else that wants what you have to sell. You might have to work to find them. They may not be dropped on your doorstep. As a friend of mine said to me when I was talking about romantic relationships, you do realize that no one is going to drop the perfect man on your doorstep. You have to go out and try to meet people. And I was like, yeah, but that's hard. I don't want to do that. So, you have to also, I think when you get older, you also realize that the choices you make about relationships have consequences. If you decide that you don't want to go on an online dating service, if you decide that you're not really the type to go hang out in the bars on Friday night, then maybe the choice that you have is that you don't meet anybody. And that's a choice. And that's a valid choice. But you have to accept that there are consequences when you make these choices. So I'm not going to lie, relationships are hard. Relationships have probably always been, and not necessarily, well, yeah, sort of. I mean, even friend relationships, customer relationships, they all have nuances to them. And we all have to figure out where our boundaries are, what our tolerances are, what is acceptable to us, and what is not, all those kind of things. So there's a lot that you have to kind of parse out when you're looking at relationships. But I do think age helps with this. If nothing else, by the time you hit 50, you've probably been through enough relationships that you have a good enough sample size to know what works for you and what doesn't. And that can be a really valuable piece of information to have. And it can be something that you can use to help build the kind of relationships that you want. So that is what's important. The next thing about growing older that I think is valuable is that I understand my issues better. And if you're, I want to read this because I like this from Nancy. Nancy says, I felt easily bullied in my 20s. As a more mature person, I now have the ability to manage those people in my life. And yes, I had the same thing, Nancy. So I love that you said that. In my 20s, I was very easy to push around, kind of, because I wasn't secure in my own convictions. And I didn't really think that I deserved to be treated well, honestly, which is sad. But that was kind of one of the ideas that was reinforced in my childhood. So I kind of let people make me do things. And I kind of I did put up with treatment that maybe wasn't the best. And I let people skate on things that I shouldn't have let them skate on. As I got older and I started liking myself better, and I also started understanding my issues, then I learned not to do that. And it was a process, and it was a process of years of work, but it can happen. So I think that it's very useful to understand how your issues impact how you interact with the world. So, and I'll say, hi, Nikki. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. And yes, Cindy, since you're 60, you should be really smart. Yes, definitely. So, what I want to talk about here is that, let's face it, we all have things that happened in our life. We all have relationships that didn't go well. We all probably received messages from family members or friends or or our culture or the people around us that we were not supposed to do this, or we were supposed to want that, or we were supposed to grow up to be this type of person, or whatever it is. Pick your thing. So everybody has something. And some people's issues are fairly minor, some people's issues are fairly severe. Some people have, and then we're also dealing with things like mental health issues, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, any of that stuff. All this stuff can impact how you relate to the world, how you feel about yourself, how you deal with things that happen to you, all of that. So one of the things that happens is, as you get older, hopefully you recognize your issues, you learn how to deal with them, you get help for the ones that you need help for, whether that's therapy, whether that's medication, whether that's, cognitive or some kind of medical therapy, whether it's talk therapy, whether it's pills, whatever it is. But once you understand what your issues are, and we should also keep in mind here that your issues can be coping mechanisms as well. I had a slew of coping mechanisms when I was younger, just to get me through life because I needed them. The thing about coping mechanisms is, once you're out of the situation that you were using those mechanisms for, they may not serve you as well. Like, I was an emotional eater, still am, but I'm handling it much better now than I used to. But I was an emotional eater from childhood because I couldn't safely express my feelings. So get mad, eat a bag of chips. Get sad, eat a pizza. Get scared, eat some cake. It was it literally was stuffing my feelings. And that was a coping mechanism that safely got me through a time when it wasn't really safe to express how I felt. So it was good at the time. But when I got older and I wasn't in that situation anymore, and there were people that were listening to me, I had to learn that I needed to use my words and not just stuff my face because the weight was not good, wasn't healthy. And I now was in a place where I could express how I felt. So once I understood that, okay, I was using food as a mechanism to avoid feeling my emotions, basically, then I could figure out how that would had been helpful for me and why it wasn't anymore. And then I could figure out how to substitute something else. In my case, cake became kickboxing. Which kickboxing, in case you haven't tried it, if you're pissed off at someone, kickboxing is an amazing way to get all your anger out. I gotta say, I probably look like a spastic duck when I kickbox, but it's amazing. I feel so much better when I'm done. And yes, there are times when I have envisioned someone's face connecting with my knee when I'm kicking. So it works really well, I gotta say. But I learned that the coping mechanism that I was using wasn't working for me, and I found a new one. And that's because, partly at least, because I'm older now and I understand my issues. And I took the time to learn why I was doing what I was doing. Now, the caveat to this is you can totally understand that you're doing something that isn't working for you, and you can totally understand why you're doing it, and you can still have a hard time not doing it anymore. That's the unfortunate reality of being a person, I think, is that you can completely comprehend every part of why something is not good for you and still keep doing it. There's there are times, and I think that's something that anyone who's ever dealt with an addiction of some kind really gets, is that you can totally realize that this thing is completely derailing your life and it's horrible and still not be able to stop. You have to find you have to be in the right place at the right time with the right tools to make that work. And that's hard to understand sometimes, I think, because you if you're on the outside looking in, you can see that, hey, this is totally toxic. It needs to stop. It needs to be done. But if you're the person in the middle of it, sometimes it's very hard to make that choice and to let go of the comfort zone that you're in, even if the comfort zone is toxic. So, understanding your issues is a big topic. I could probably do a whole show just on that. But I think one of the benefits of age is you've lived with your issues longer, you have a longer term perspective, and you understand maybe why you do some of the things you do. And I think that's an important and valuable thing to really look at is, there are, and I also want to say, just FYI, in case you ain't figured this out yet, I do not claim to be a paragon of mental health by any means. I am fully aware that I still have issues that I'm dealing with. I am fully aware that I haven't adequately dealt with some of them. I'm a work in progress. We all are. I'm lucky that I honestly feel very lucky that I've made it as far as I have and I've gotten to this place because this place is a pretty good place. Does that mean that I'm going to stop working on my issues? God, no. I'm going to keep working on them because I want to be better than this place. I want to sit here a year from now and do this same conversation and say, I thought it was great last year, but this year it's even better. So for those of you that are struggling with an issue or struggling with some coping mechanisms that you're having a hard time letting go of, keep working on it because half of the battle is figuring out what you're doing that isn't working for you anymore or what you're doing that might be toxic for you. The other half is figuring out how to fix it. And if you need help, if you need to go to a therapist, if you need to get medication, there is, if you need to write a blog or write a journal or talk to a friend or whatever it is, or do a podcast. There is no shame in any of that. And I really, really want to say this. I can't say this enough. That is one of the things that I have also learned from getting older is, you know what? Yeah, I have some weird coping mechanisms. Yes, I have some damage, but you know what? I'm still here, dang it. So I'm proud of my damage. I'm proud of my scars, the literal ones and the figurative ones, because I made it through all that stuff. And I'm going to be 53, which there are times in my life when I wouldn't have bet on me being 53. I wouldn't have bet on me being 23, honestly. But I made it. So, victory lap for me, I guess. But that's one of the benefits of age too. Look, I went through some hard stuff and I survived it. I can keep surviving. That's a very comforting thing. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is one that like I said, full disclosure, I am totally a work in progress in this one. But I want to talk about it because I have noticed that as I've gotten older, I've realized that I'm never going to be 5'11" and rail thin. It's just not how I'm built. When you're young, you kind of have this theory that if you just eat right and exercise enough, you can get yourself to where you want to be. When you get older, you realize that, you know what? I'm always going to be 5'4" with boobs and a butt and hips. I'm just built that way. I'm built curvy. It's just how I am. And for years, I fought that. And for years, I was told that wasn't acceptable. And one of the benefits of age is just realizing that I can eat right, I can exercise, I can do everything that I'm told I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm still going to have boobs and a butt and hips. Just the reality. It's just how I'm built. And I'm okay with that now. My body is my body. And honestly, my body's gone through a lot of trauma. It's almost 53 years. So I've really learned more, not only acceptance, but appreciation that, hey, my body has gone through all this stuff. And it's still ticking. It's gone through 2 heart surgeries. It's gone through pneumonia a couple of times. It's gone through, my overeating and my not exercising and my not sleeping and the myriad of ways that I did not treat it well for a very long time. And it could have done some really evil things to me, and it didn't. And so I like my body now. I think of it as a friend now, whereas before I think I thought of it more as almost an enemy, something that was kind of against me that didn't work well for me. And now I'm kind of like, are there things that I wish maybe were different? Sure, I think everybody does. But that's partly cultural too, because the culture tells us we're all supposed to be stick thin and blonde, and we're supposed to be not not curvy, and we're supposed to be, I don't know, something that I'm not. And the problem becomes, if you listen to that too much, you get either focused on trying to make yourself what people are telling you is acceptable, or you dislike yourself so much that you abuse your body because you think that it's substandard. So that's I think, honestly, one of the best gifts I've got from getting older is that I don't worry about it anymore. I have made peace with the fact that this is what there is. And there are parts of my body that I really like. I actually think I have a pretty nice shape, but for a long time I was told it wasn't acceptable. So it took me quite a while to go, you know what? This is not half bad. I'm okay. I can work with this. So, and I like these comments here. Evelyn says, anyone who says something like that to you isn't your type. Stay away from them. I'll refer you, Evelyn, to the fact that I don't see my family very often. That would be part of the reason why. And Cindy says, I do not think any of us can say we have not gone through some body issues. I will never have the young body I had in high school. Having 9 children will change everything. Yeah, it will. But you had 9 children. Think of what your body did. Your body nurtured 9 children and delivered them, which, holy crap, the thought of that, just, you went through that 9 times? You're a warrior, woman. You are a warrior. But I think when you get, and I also, sadly, and I don't necessarily say that this is right, but I also think that cultural pressure depletes when you're older, because older women aren't necessarily seen as desirable or sexual or whatever you want to, however you want to put that. And so there isn't necessarily the same sort of focus on what you look like. It's still there because it's always there for women. I mean, you could be like 104 and there'd still be people who are saying you're too fat or too thin or too this or too that. You know, it's part of our culture, unfortunately. But as you get older, hopefully other things start coming into play. When you're young, it seems like if you're a young woman, a lot of times the only calling card you have is what you look like. And if you're deemed not acceptable for whatever the reason, then you have no purpose at all. When you get older, there may be a little more room for, you know, are you competent? Are you kind? Are you talented? Whatever it is. Not I'm not saying that's right by any means. I don't think it is. I think for women, as in general, as a category, there is far too much focus on how you look and far too little focus on the kind of person you are and what you're putting out in the world and what you can do, which is sad, but there it is. And I like this from Evelyn. Your family is who accepts you and loves you, not just blood. Totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. So the next thing that I think aging has brought to me, and I would guess to others too, is that others' opinions aren't as important. When you're young and you're kind of looking for validation, what other people think of you or what other people might think of you really can be important. As you get older, hopefully, and this doesn't happen for everyone, but hopefully you learn that what other people think of you isn't as important as what you think of you. And that sounds kind of self-centered, but it's not really. In the end, you're living in this skin. You have to like you and the choices you make and the things that you say and the way that you interact with the world. Other people are always going to have opinions about what you do. They're going to have opinions about how you look. They're going to have opinions about who you're friends with. They're going to have opinions about the work you do. They're going to have opinions about pretty much any subject you can name. That's kind of the nature of people. And I know I do it. You know, I'll look at something somebody else is doing, and the first thing that happens in my brain is I make a judgment about it. And then I kind of have to step it back and go, why are you doing that? Why do you feel that you have the right to decide that this person that's wearing a tank top and shorts is bulging out of them shouldn't be wearing that? Why does that have anything to do with you? Or, you know, if somebody's dating somebody that I don't particularly care for, why do I feel that I have the right to put my 2 cents in about this person isn't good enough for you? Now, granted, there are times when the person really isn't good enough and somebody needs to make that point. But overall, we need to do a lot less judging in this world, and we need to do a lot less being sanctimonious, I guess is the word, where we think we know how other people should live, because we don't know how other people should live. We barely even know how we should live most of the time, much less anybody else. But one of the benefits I think of getting older is you trust your own judgment more and you worry about what other people think less. Not always. I mean, I think we're human beings, and humans as a species are communal animals. We're kind of hardwired to care about what the community and the culture thinks about us. And we're certainly hardwired to care about what the people that we care about think about us. So, you know, that's just part of being human, I think. But at the same time, once you've been around a while and you've been through things and you've made decisions and you've made choices and you understand that sometimes you're going to get it right and sometimes you're going to get it wrong, you worry less about what other people think about the choices that you make or the things that you do. You worry less about, am I carrying an extra 10 pounds? Hopefully. You worry less about, I'm going to go on camera and say a bunch of stuff, and what if people don't like it? You still want people to like it. You want people to think your choices are smart and good because, like I said, communal animals, we're human. But at the same time, you don't care as much because you have a skill set and you have a track record. And you also understand that sometimes other people can, this will probably be no surprise to a lot of you, other people can, with the best of motives and intentions and from a very loving place, tell you stuff that is absolutely wrong. And anybody who's ever started a business is probably familiar with this. If you've ever started your own business, there had to probably be, unless you were really, really lucky, at least one person who wanted to read you the stats for how many small businesses fail in their first year, or who told you that your area wouldn't support a small business, or who had a horror story about somebody who started a small business and failed dismally. Everybody always has an opinion, and some of those opinions will be expressed with the sole intent of keeping you from harm, saving you from hurt, with a total loving spirit, and they can be complete crap and they can be totally wrong. So it all circles back to as you gain more confidence in yourself, you also gain more confidence in your own interpretation of what your life should be, what you should do, and your own judgment. And when you have all those things, then what other people think isn't as important. As someone who grew up in a household where we were always worried whatever other people thought, and we were consummate actors because of it, I gotta say, this is way better. This is way better because I can just be me and I can say what I want to say and I can do what I want to do. And I don't really care if you don't like it. I mean, yes, I care because I'm human. And there are some people that I care about their opinion more than others. And there are some people whose opinion I listen to quite a lot because, like I said, we're all human. We want to have community, we want to have connections. But for the most part, I don't really care what you think of my life. I don't care if I seem weird. I don't care if you don't like my ideas or my show or, you know, my choices. I may not like yours either. Doesn't mean I don't like you. Doesn't mean that we can't be friends. It just means that my judgments are mine and your judgments are yours, and they don't have to be shared. And they don't have to matter to me. I mean, yes, of course, if you care about people, their opinion of you matters. But it's hard to describe, and I'm not even sure that I can adequately do it here, but you can care about someone and care that they think well of you and not necessarily take all their opinions on board. You have to be the captain of your ship. You have to be the person that sets the course. And when you get older, you get better at doing that, I think. And part of the reason that you get better at doing that is because you aren't as worried about what other people think. And the last thing I want to talk about real quick is that as you get older, you develop survival skills. Some of us develop them pretty young, but as you get older, just by virtue of living your life and going through things, you develop survival skills. You develop ways to get through things. And I like this comment from Evelyn. Yes, sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. And I also think, Evelyn, the addendum to your comment there is sometimes we have to agree to disagree and also agree that both of us are good people who just have different opinions, who just think differently about something. I think there's way too much vilifying people who don't agree with you in this world right now. So I think we always need to be aware that you can disagree with someone and they can be a good person and you can be a good person and you can still be friends and you can still respect each other. You just don't agree on this particular issue or how something should be handled. And I think that's a skill that we used to have and we've kind of lost, and I'd like to see it come back. Civil disagreement, civil discourse, I'd like to see that come back because I think it's really kind of been lost, which is sad. So, sorry, slight digression, but survival skills are basically the skills you use when you have a crisis, when you have something hard happen in your life, when you have something sad happen in your life. If you're dealing with a mental illness or you're dealing with a physical illness or a chronic illness, they're the things that you pick up that allow you to have the kind of life that you want to have, to do the kind of things you want to do. And part of how you develop these skills is going through these things over and over and over. And the only way you can do that is if you're getting older. And as you get older, you discover the tools that help you get through these times that might otherwise be difficult. So, Evelyn's making me laugh. We need to put that on a banner. Yes, we do. I wish someone would do that. So the whole idea of not necessarily knowing that you'll get through things is kind of something that happens mostly when you're young. You're standing on the abyss of this crisis or this hard event or this depression or whatever it is, and you don't have any track record yet. So you don't necessarily know that you can survive it. The benefit of getting older is that you develop the skills and the coping mechanisms to know I can get through this stuff that's hard. And that's really important. So I think survival skills are probably one of the most valuable things I've gotten over the course of living my life. I know I can get through pretty much anything. I'm not going to say it's all going to be fun and I'm going to love it, but I can make it through. And that's a hugely valuable thing that I think only comes with age. You understand that, yes, sad things happen, but I can make it through them. Or hard things happen, or unfair things happen, or unpleasant things happen, whatever you want to call it. But I can make it through this, and I have the skills to do it, and I know how. I've been on this path before. Now, hopefully there isn't too much of this, but one of the benefits of age is if you do encounter something hard, you have a toolkit. You have a track record. And those two things are hugely valuable because I will say from experience, hard situations are easier if you know you've made it through similar things in the past. If you know you have a track record and you know you have a set of skills to get you through. Now, the skills may not always be optimal. They may not always be the best thing you could do, but they're enough to get you through. And that's the important thing. And the last thing I want to talk about here before we go, because holy crap, I've yapped for almost 50 minutes already, is the concept of late bloomers. And the reason that I want to talk about this is because I am one. And I think it's a stupid concept, honestly. So I wanted to kind of point this out. If you're not familiar with this term, late bloomers are people who find success later in life or who find their calling later in life. The ones that people mention a lot. Julia Child didn't really have success till she was in her 60s. Grandma Moses started painting at like 78, I think it was. And those are the two female ones that a lot of people mention. And the late bloomer is someone who basically just doesn't find their path or their calling or whatever until they're older. And so maybe they don't have their first big success until they're in their 40s or their 50s or their 80s or whatever it is. And what is so stupid about this concept is we seem to have this theory that there's this schedule that you're supposed to, you fall in love between 25 and 30, you have your first kid at 28, you get out of college at 22, you buy your first house at 25, you get your first promotion at 20, whatever it is. It's like there's this cosmic schedule somewhere that we're all supposed to be following for how our lives go. The reality is that, say you didn't get the best of nurturing in your childhood and you have confidence issues, it's going to take you, or you have issues of any kind. Say you had a trauma, say you had a childhood illness, say you followed people's advice and it was bad and you got a degree and took a job that you hated, and it wasn't until your kids were grown and out of the house that you were able to do what you wanted to do, and you had huge success doing that. There's a number of reasons why people may not have their big success or their major success until they're older. And the fact that we kind of quantify this as a late bloomer, kind of as an outlier, kind of implies that there's a schedule somewhere that we're supposed to figure out in our 20s what we want to be and where we're going to focus our energies. And we're supposed to have the confidence and the drive and the knowledge and all the stuff we need to be able to make that work. Which I think, honestly, in my 20s, I couldn't find my backside with my hands half the time. And I didn't have confidence in myself. And I wasn't secure in my talents. And I didn't even know that I could necessarily do half the stuff that I'm doing now. So I don't like the concept of late bloomers. I think it's a pejorative. I think it's kind of sad. I think we need to stop focusing all the plaudits and the applause on the people who are in their 20s and found their thing. I think it's great that they did, and I don't think we should diminish the fact that they're doing great work and they're making a contribution. I'm just saying, where is this mythical schedule that says that if you haven't done certain things by certain times, you're a late bloomer? And why is the fact that you didn't find your calling or your path or your passion until you were in your 40s or your 50s or your 60s or your 90s less valid than if you found it in your 20s? So it's just a concept. And it, again, this is another thing when I was doing research for the show that popped up several times as late bloomers, and these people were late bloomers and blah, blah. And I'm like, that's just, they had success. They found what they loved. And maybe there was a reason that they weren't able to do it before. Maybe there was a reason that maybe they didn't know about it. Maybe they didn't think it was an option. Maybe they had obligations that kept them from doing it. There's a million different reasons why somebody might not find their thing until they're later in life. So I think we need to get rid of this concept, and we just need to start celebrating that, hey, you found your thing, and I'm so excited, and look at the good that you're doing, and not necessarily put a label on it, and not imply that, hey, you really should have found this 30 years ago, because screw that, man. You find it when you find it. And I think the celebration is you found it and how exciting that is, and not, well, it took you till you were 50 or 60 or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, and I think maybe this one just rubs me the wrong way a little bit, because I feel like I'm finally finding what I was supposed to be doing all this time. And I've been circling around it for a while, but I feel like I'm finally getting to the heart of it, and I'm really starting to make a contribution. And that's important to me. And so the idea that I should have found this when I was in my 20s, I wasn't the same person in my 20s. So I couldn't have found it. I had to go through the stuff I went through and learn the stuff I needed to learn so I could get to this place. So I think we just need to celebrate the fact that you got there and not put a label on it, if that makes any sense. And I'm almost at an hour here. And once again, my voice is going craggy. So I'm going to say thank you all for being here. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for spending time with me each week. You don't know how much that means to me. This is probably one of the best things I get to do every week. And the fact that you all come and listen to me ramble on as I do means so much. You have no idea. Next week, there will be a guest. And I'm hopefully lining up guests. So you won't have to listen to me talk by myself again for a while. But keep your eye out because I will be putting up details about the guest who will be here next week. And I like this from Nancy. Agreed. I feel that labeling in general is the biggest issue. I think you are totally right, Nancy. I don't know why we need to put labels on things. That makes no sense to me, but we seem to have this real fetish about putting labels on things. So thank you all for being here with me today. And I do want to point out that we are ramping up for the 2022 Applique Getaway. If you haven't joined the On My Way to AG Facebook group, please go do that if you're interested in Applique Getaway, because that's where all the news is going to be spread out to the world. Thank you, everybody. I so appreciate you being here. I'm going to check the comments one last time. Thank you, Cindy, for being here. Thank you, Evelyn. And I will stay safe. It's sort of snowing out, but it's more icy than snow. It's not fun. Anyway, thank you all. I'm done saying thank you now. I'm going to hit end broadcast. And I will see you all next week.